2 days before the exam, I would be studying for paper 2. Because why would you study for paper 2 the day before paper 1? Just doesn't make sense. It's not going to be fresh. But I would do it the day before that so that it's relatively fresh and you can pick up after paper 1 exam. So doing what I said about the essays for paper 2 and craft of writing practice, and then have a look at the days before that, right? There's a lot of reciting, that this is just what I would be doing, and a lot of practicing new questions. So the general emphasis for me a week out from the exam is to actually adapt to new questions for all my essays. That's the general emphasis that I have. My emphasis a week before trials and the final exam is not memorization. That's earlier. If I'm going to learn an essay, I don't want to be doing that 1 day before the exam. Okay? So everyone here has an opportunity to make sure you learn those essays really well in advance. And then the week before the exam, you push the focus to obviously reciting your essay, reminding yourself of it, but then more importantly, practicing adapting to new questions. Same with craft of writing, practice different ones, but you would have already remembered a core, you would have memorized a core draft, so you just have to be super flexible. What's the assumption here, by the way, a week before the English exam? What assumption am I making? I'm assuming that you're going to be doing English every day. Now that might not be the case. Obviously, you might be looking at other subjects as well, but hopefully you can take away from the sentiment of what I'm saying. If you've got subjects that are the following week, I would be studying more for those earlier. Whatever exams you have the week after English, I would be doing a lot of study on that before this week. It's the recency effect, memory recall. It's just a fact that whatever you're fresh on, whatever you've done most recently is going to be more readily available in your mind for the exam. If you've looked at it 2 weeks ago and then you've done maths this week, because you have maths the next week, that's not a great strategy. So common sense approach here. You might want to balance out the English here. I'm not saying to study for English all day on all of these days. Although see the red means I probably would only be doing English on those 2 days. All of these other days, you can mix it in with other subjects that you need to do. If we zoom out, just have a look at what I'm doing in each of the different parts. I'm focusing on adaptation the week before the exam. And then before that, I am learning my essays while also looking at some different questions and doing a lot of thesis statements and topic sentences. Introductions and topic sentences. Do the full intro if you can. It's about distributing your time. You're not going to be studying 24/7, I get that. So why not just spend time on what matters the most? Introductions, topic sentences, memorize early your core drafts. But what are you actually memorizing? Here's the most important thing. You don't want to memorize a poor essay. So you make sure the essay is of a high standard or is of the standard that you would like. So you draft practice essays to a question and say, hey, if I got this question on the day, I'd be happy if I wrote this essay. It wouldn't make sense to learn anything else. You've got to be happy with the thing that you're learning. How do you improve the quality of your essay? What are some tools that you can use? Get feedback. So use your teachers. Often teachers are very generous with their time around the HSC. Be polite. Send an email. Can you please have a look at this? Can I get feedback? Okay, that's your teacher. They're probably going to be very busy. Who else can you use for feedback? Peer review. Everyone just write that down. That's something I did a lot when I was doing the HSC. Me and 2 others exchanged all of our drafts and edited and reviewed each other's. Ideally, get people who have similar ambitions to you, or if you can, ask someone who is higher up than you. If you are friends or you know the person who's at the top of the year or in the top kind of 5 ranks, reach out to them and say, hey, I'd be so grateful if you could please give me some feedback on what I'm doing wrong here. That's going to really help you, okay? Just make sure you reciprocate the favor. It's great. That's why it's great if you have a group of people where you're all aiming for a similar goal, right? And you can help pull each other up. But it is great to get advice from people who are at the top, so reach out to them. So I was in this group of 3, and in the preparation, we were always sending each other drafts. People get very protective over their draft essays at times, right? Don't get protective over them with this group. So have a group of 2 or 3 people. Don't make it any bigger than that, unless someone's desperate to join the drafting group. And then you exchange essays, give each other honest feedback. Don't be lazy with your feedback because they'll then be lazy to you. And do that exchange, right? That was so beneficial. They'll see things that you're not seeing because you're reading over your essay and sometimes you just can't see the flaws. Or you can't see another way you could approach something. Or you don't know how to cut down the sentence. So peer review, teachers, and any other help you can get. But obviously spend the time yourself going through and editing. And the second thing, you don't want to memorize an essay that is too long. So you have to, how do you ensure it's not too long? You have to time your essays, right? Everyone say that. Time your essays. Good. Most people don't do it. You've got to do it for all of your responses. And what's the most important thing? You do that process early. The earlier the better, right? So if you're a couple of weeks out, do that ASAP and have that written out. The target for your essays, if you have a decent speed with your writing, 32 minutes. 32 minutes to do your full draft. Because you allocated 40 minutes in paper 2, people say, oh, you allocated 45 in paper 1, right? Technically it's 45, yeah? Treat that like it's 40. That's my advice. Because it's still worth 20 marks. They're all worth 20 marks. So treat them all as 40 minutes and give yourself that extra time for comprehension, which for most people is a lot harder. Who thinks comprehension is quite difficult to do in the time they give you typically, like 40 minutes, 40 to 45. It's quite hard because if there's one text that gets you, stumps you, you might need extra time on that. So I borrow the 5 minutes from the essay of the common module, and I say, hey, that's just 40 like the other ones. That's fine. They're all 20 marks. Okay? So 40 minutes is what you get. 32 minutes is what you aim for. If you're a bit of a slower writer, you can go up to 34 minutes. But why do we allow that buffer? Adaptation, adapting, rewriting new sentences. I'm not saying to stick exactly to what you had. You need to be willing to write new material on the day, but obviously I want you to be able to use your core materials, use your core evidence. So make sure you've got good evidence. Make sure the essay is short enough, because if you don't know the time of your essay, what's likely to happen on the day? There's a good chance that you'll run out of time because you don't know the time, and that's a horrible feeling after. That's not a good way to end the exam. But what's the other thing that plays into that? It's not just running out of time by the end, it's the stress. What are you going to do wrong? You're going to start writing the essay straight away. You're not going to take that moment to think because you don't know the time that you're actually working with. If you know you've got a 32 to 34 minute draft, then you know you have a couple of minutes, a minute or two, to really think about that introduction. And then you know you have another 4 to 5 minutes that you can spread throughout the writing process to actually make those tweaks as you go. Okay, you need to write as fast as you can for all the parts that aren't going to change, and then you have time to actually think about how you can rephrase things in each sentence. I had a book, buy yourself a book, where you just do the write-outs timed and write it in big numbers, big digits, the actual time it took you. Be honest with yourself. If it took you 39 minutes, unfortunately, you're going to have to say goodbye to a lot of your essay, well, not a lot of it, but some chunks. So then the question becomes, well, if my essay's too long, what do I cut out? First of all, when you do the cut down, try and make your sentences as concise as possible. Don't story tell. There's basic things like that. Just go straight into the analysis in the body paragraph. But assuming you've done all of that, if you had to chop out any particular sentence, especially on the day of the exam, if you're running out of time, where would you target? What would have the least damage? What would impose the least damage or would have the least impact on the mark? Don't cut the conclusion. Make the conclusion one sentence if you're really struggling with time, or if you're in the drafting process and you just need to have everything else that's in there, which is unlikely, but assuming you really have condensed everything, you have 3 bits of evidence in each paragraph and you can't take any more away, then you make your conclusion shorter to 1 sentence. You can still get full marks that way. The next thing I would be looking at taking out if you were struggling in the exam are the link sentences, first of all from your last body paragraph, and then work upwards depending on how much time you have. So you want the full thing for as much of the essay as possible, but if you're really running out of time, you take away the link sentence of the last body paragraph and then you shorten the conclusion to 1 sentence. So in fact, when I was drafting my essays, I used to basically just have one kind of longish sentence for my conclusion. That's what I went in knowing I was probably going to do, because I wanted to spend more time on the evidence and the analysis. It's important that you have a conclusion. You must have at least 1 sentence for the conclusion, or your marks, no matter where you were, will come down, because structurally you haven't got a conclusion now. But at least if you have the 1 sentence and then you take away the link sentences, that's probably not going to have any impact on your mark, or it's a very minor impact relative to not having a conclusion.